Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're going to jump into some, seemingly separate things happening in American law and politics.
That's right.
Our goal here is to sift through the headlines, find the really critical bits, and connect the dots for you.
Yeah, give you a clearer picture.
Because this isn't just, dry law stuff. It touches on what it means to be American, who even counts as American anymore, and whether the Constitution...
Well, whether it still means what we thought it meant for the last century and a half plus.
Exactly. And we want to help you understand not just what's happening, but really why it matters. We'll be looking at the broader context, the potential implications. As we dig into the source material today, you'll see how some really foundational principles, things like institutional integrity, even the definition of identity itself, are being seriously challenged right now.
Redefining American challenges to citizenship and identity.
Okay, let's start this deep dive with the definition of American citizenship, specifically looking at the whole debate around birthright citizenship. That's the 14th Amendment, right? Correct. A really fundamental piece of American law.
Established way back in 1868. And the idea is pretty straightforward. If you're born here, on U.S. soil, you're a citizen.
Right.
Doesn't matter who your parents are or, their legal status. Born here, you're in.
And the history behind that is so important. You have to remember, this was right after the Civil War.
Right.
A huge reason for it was to make absolutely sure that formerly enslaved people and their children couldn't ever be denied citizenship. It was meant to be definitive.
So the principle was clear. Where you're born, not who your parents are, just solely, not just sanguinis.
Precisely. A very deliberate choice, cementing a broad definition of who belongs. Legal scholars always stress that post-Civil War context. It tells you how strong the framers intended it to be.
Okay, but despite that clarity, sources show former President Trump repeatedly looked for ways to, kind of get this constitutional guarantee.
He did.
And not by trying to amend the Constitution, which is, let's face it, incredibly hard. You need Congress, the state.
A massive hurdle.
Instead, he tried to do it just by signing an executive order.
Which, legally speaking, raised a lot of eyebrows. The consensus was pretty much, you can't just rewrite the Constitution with a pen stroke.
And the courts agreed, right?
Right.
Federal judges all over the country, Seattle, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maryland.
Yep. They all said basically the same thing. Nope. An executive order doesn't override the Constitution. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. A clearer message.
So this is where it gets interesting with the legal maneuvering, the whole nationwide injunction thing.
Oh, yes. The procedural twist. So the Supreme Court had recently put some limits on federal judges issuing these nationwide injunctions. One judge stopping a policy across the entire country.
They wanted to curb that power a bit.
Right. Unless specific conditions were met. On paper, that actually looked like it might help the Trump administration in these cases.
But there was a loophole.
There was, a clever one. The Supreme Court also said, look, if a state sues, or, and this is key, if a case gets certified as a class action, then a nationwide block is still okay. Okay. So the lawyers fighting the birthright citizenship order, they adapted fast. They went to the judges and said, okay, let's make this a class action.
And the class was?
The class was defined basically as all babies born in the U.S. and even those yet to be born who'd be affected. Super broad.
Wow.
And once the judges certified that class, boom. The effect was exactly the same as a nationwide injunction. The order was blocked everywhere. It was a smart legal move.
Now, here's a point. The sources really hammer on this apparent inconsistency from the Trump administration's own lawyers about unborn children.
Yes, this was striking. In the birthright cases, the administration's team argued that unborn children can't be part of a legal class. Basically, they don't have legal standing before birth to be included in the lawsuit.
But wait, wasn't this the same team that argued for years, all the way to the Supreme Court, that fetuses do have full legal rights when they're trying to overturn Roe v. Wade?
Exactly. That's the wild hypocrisy commentators jumped all over.
Right.
It looked like, when it suited them politically to get Roe overturned, unborn children suddenly had all these constitutional rights. But when recognizing those rights would have blocked their executive order on citizenship, suddenly, nope, no rights, no standing. Consistency wasn't exactly the priority, it seemed.
Okay, so given how quickly they usually rush things to the Supreme Court, especially things Trump cares about, why hasn't this birthright citizenship case gone up on an emergency appeal? That seems odd.
It does seem odd on the surface. Legal analysts basically offer two main theories.
Okay, what are they?
Theory one, They might just know they don't have the votes, even with the current conservative majority on the court.
Really?
Yeah. Birthright citizenship is so baked into the 14th Amendment. Its history is so clear. Overturning it might just be a bridge too far, even for some conservative justices. It could destabilize too much settled law.
Okay, that makes sense. What's theory two?
Theory two is it's about political timing. Maybe they're holding it back strategically. Well, maybe they want to bundle it with other legal fights later on, or wait for a moment when the news cycle is totally swamped with something else, try to sneak it through. More about political calculation than pure legal strategy. Kicking the can down the road, perhaps.
Interesting. So while the birthright citizenship fight is kind of simmering on the back burner at the Supreme Court, there's another case involving immigration enforcement that is being rushed there.
That's right. A really immediate battle. This one focused on racial profiling.
What's the background here?
Okay, so a federal court in California and then the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court agreed. They blocked certain ICE tactics, specifically tactics that seemed to target people based on how they looked or what language they spoke.
Right.
But according to the sources, the Trump administration didn't just ignore that ruling. They apparently doubled down on using those tactics.
Double down.
Well, this led to further legal action, and now it's heading straight for the Supreme Court. It highlights that tension between what the executive branch wants to do for enforcement and what the courts say is allowed under the Constitution.
And some of the descriptions of these tactics are pretty intense, this Operation Trojan Horse.
Yeah, that's the term used in some reports. It describes ICE agents, sometimes like 30 at a time, rolling up in unmarked moving trucks, Penske trucks, apparently into places like parking lots in LA.
Unmarked moving trucks.
Unmarked moving trucks. Then the back doors fly open, agents pour out, and according to accounts cited in legal documents and news reports, they'd be chasing people down, tackling them. Some reports even described agents yanking people up by the collar, holding them up almost like, well, the description used was hunters showing off a kill. Really jarring imagery.
Wow. That sounds less like targeted enforcement and more like a sweep.
Exactly. It suggests an approach based on general characteristics in an area, not specific evidence about individuals.
So what was the administration's legal defense for that when they took it to the Supreme Court? How do you justify that?
Well, this is the core of the controversy. Their argument essentially was this. If someone has brown skin, speaks Spanish, and is in an area known to have a high number of undocumented immigrants, that's enough for probable cause to stop and detain them.
Wait, just appearance, language, and location.
Mm-hmm.
No actual evidence they've done anything wrong?
That was the contention. Just those factors combined were enough, in their view. No specific evidence required beyond that profile.
That sounds... Isn't that the definition of racial profiling? How is that constitutional?
That's exactly what critics and civil liberties groups argue. They say it flies in the face of the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures and the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection. It seems to set a standard where looking or sounding a certain way makes you inherently suspicious in the eyes of law enforcement, which is, well, as critics put it, the stuff of authoritarian regimes.
And the impact isn't just on undocumented people, right? U.S. citizens get caught up in this, too.
Absolutely. That's a critical point. Reports explicitly mention U.S. citizens being detained in these raids. Pregnant women, people with absolutely no immigration issues whatsoever.
So it shows that once you greenlight that kind of profiling...
No one is safe. Exactly. Once those lines are blurred, constitutional protections for everyone start to erode. It demonstrates how policies aimed at one group can easily spill over and affect the rights of all citizens.
And this has ripple effects beyond our borders, too, doesn't it? How the world sees the U.S.
Big time. The sources point to some really tangible impacts. For instance, tourism from Canada is reportedly down significantly, maybe as much as 40%.
40%? Wow.
Yeah, and other countries are seeing similar drops in people visiting the U.S. There are even anecdotal reports like parents in Canada pulling their daughters out of trips with the Girl Guides, their version of Girl Scouts, because they were worried about them being targeted or hassled crossing the border or while in the U.S.
That's incredible. So thinking ahead, big events like the World Cup, the Olympics.
Exactly. That's the looming question. Will athletes, teams, fans from all over the world feel safe coming here if they're worried about being stopped, detained, or harassed just because of how they look or what language they speak? It could seriously damage America's image and its ability to host these global gatherings. It's a real concern about our standing on the world stage.
Undermining institutions, challenges to trust and public safety.
Okay, let's pivot now to something that might sound a bit, well, wonky, maybe, economic data. But the stakes here are huge. We're talking about the potential rewriting of how our own government measures the economy.
It sounds technical, but you're right. The implications are massive.
It's been compared to, putting the fox in charge of the hen house, but the hens are the economic numbers that you, Wall Street, global markets, everyone relies on.
And what's really telling is who is raising alarms. The Wall Street Journal, right?
Yeah.
Generally seen as having a conservative viewpoint editorially.
Yeah.
They've been running some pretty scathing editorials against the Trump administration's moves on economic data. And this is while, get this, Trump is actually in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against the Journal.
Wait, seriously? He's suing them, and they're still criticizing his administration on this.
Exactly. That tells you how deeply concerned they must be about the integrity of these economic numbers, that they're willing to keep publishing these critiques despite that huge legal fight hanging over them.
So what was the specific flashpoint here? I remember hearing Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS.
That was a major event, yes. Reports indicate he fired the BLS director simply because he didn't like a particular jobs report.
Just didn't like the numbers, so fired the messenger.
That's how it was widely interpreted. A direct hit on the independence of a really crucial agency.
And the BLS, just to remind people, how important is it?
Oh, it's fundamentally important. Economists call it the platinum standard for jobs and inflation data. You've got something like 2,000 economists relying on it, Wall Street investors making billion-dollar bets based on it, our global trading partners needing it for an honest picture of the U.S. economy.
So its credibility is everything.
Everything. Without that trust, the whole system gets shaky.
Okay, so who did Trump nominate to replace the fired director, this E.J. Antoni guy?
Right, E.J. Antoni, described primarily as the chief economist for the Heritage Foundation. Sources note he got his Ph.D. relatively recently, about 5 years prior, from a university maybe not everyone's familiar with.
And critics immediately questioned his qualifications, right? Like, is he suited for this highly technical, nonpartisan job?
Yeah, the main concern voiced by commentators was whether his background, heavily tied to a partisan think tank, and his relatively recent academic credentials really matched up with what's needed to run a massive, complex statistical agency like BLS. It's a job that demands deep expertise and, crucially, a reputation for complete neutrality. The comparison some critics made was about as qualified to run the BLS as I am to perform brain surgery with a butter knife.
Ouch. And what about his actual views? Did those raise flags?
They did, significantly. He's been called a partisan mouthpiece by some critics. And literally hours before his nomination was announced, he reportedly went on Fox News.
And said what?
He advocated for stopping the monthly jobs report altogether, suggested switching to only quarterly reports.
Stop the monthly report. That's huge news every month.
Exactly. And then he reportedly joked that in BLS, the L is silent, implying the agency is just BS.
Wow. So the guy nominated to run the agency is publicly trashing its work right before he gets the job.
That's what the reports indicate. Critics argued, how can you trust the data? If the person in charge seems to think it's garbage or wants to release less of it, it immediately undermines confidence.
Okay, let's maybe just clarify how the BLS actually works, because there are misconceptions. It's not just one guy making up numbers, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's a massive statistical operation. Every month, they survey something like 60,000 households and 120,000 businesses.
Huge sample sizes.
Huge. And participation is voluntary. It's also totally normal for the initial monthly numbers to get revised later as more data comes in. That's standard practice in statistics, not evidence of manipulation.
Right. It's about getting it accurate over time, not getting it perfect instantly.
Precisely. BLS officials and independent analysts say there's zero evidence the numbers get massaged for political reasons. The revision process shows they're refining the data, not cooking the books.
So, back to Antoni. What did the Wall Street Journal say about his ideas, like switching to quarterly reports?
Their critique was sharp. They basically implied he was offering slogans instead of real solutions.
Meaning
they argued for actual improvements, breaking down bureaucratic silos between agencies, modernizing how data is collected, maybe even finally stopping the use of fax machines for transmitting some data.
Wait, they still use fax machines? Seriously?
Apparently in some corners, yes. So the Journal was saying focus on that stuff, the real operational improvements. Their big warning was, if Antony gets confirmed and starts messing with the frequency or methodology, markets might start treating U.S. labor data like they treat, say, Chinese economic numbers.
With deep skepticism, assuming it's politically influenced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which would be a massive blow to U.S. credibility.
And this wasn't just about the BLS job, was it? There was talk of a bigger agenda.
It seemed so.
Yeah.
Reports surfaced back in February that Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, was floating plans that sounded even more sweeping. Things like potentially defunding statistical agencies across the board, firing staff and not replacing them, even changing the fundamental way GDP, gross domestic product, is calculated.
Changing how GDP is calculated? That sounds like, I don't know, reprogramming your bathroom scale to show a lower number, even if you haven't lost weight.
That's the analogy critics used. It looks like an attempt to make the numbers look better on paper, regardless of the underlying reality.
But wasn't there even disagreement within Trump's own potential team about some economic ideas, like interest rates?
Yes, that's another interesting wrinkle. Scott Bessent, who was floated as Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary, reportedly disagreed strongly with Trump's idea of slashing interest rates way down from around 4.25% to just 2%.
That's a huge cut.
Massive. Bessent apparently called it reckless and suggested a much smaller, more cautious cut. So even among his own potential top advisors, there wasn't necessarily agreement on these really aggressive economic moves.
So tying this all together, what's the bottom line for you listening at home if this path continues?
It could lead straight to what some call economic propaganda.
Meaning the numbers sound great, but they don't match what people are actually experiencing.
Exactly. And if that happens, trust evaporates.
Not just Americans lose faith, but the whole world stops trusting U.S. data.
And that affects
your mortgage rate, your retirement savings, the health of the company you work for. Global investors need reliable numbers. If they can't trust ours, they invest elsewhere or demand higher returns for the risk.
So the damage isn't just theoretical?
Not at all. Analysts warn that politicizing these core economic numbers causes damage that could be generational. It erodes confidence in a way that's incredibly hard to rebuild.
Okay, let's shift gears to another institution facing pressure, law enforcement, specifically the FBI. There have been reports of what sounds like a purge.
Purge is the word some observers are using, yes. It refers to reports of senior FBI officials, people with decades of experience, being suddenly fired or pushed out, often without the usual procedures or clear reasons given publicly.
And the case of Spencer Evans seems like a prime example. It really does. Here's a guy, a career agent, over 21 years in the Bureau. He was the special agent in charge, the bonk of the Las Vegas field office, a really significant leadership role.
And his background was solid.
Extremely solid. Worked major terrorism cases, like the Boston Marathon bombing, led kidnapping investigations. He even oversaw the investigation into a bombing at the Trump Hotel in Vegas.
Okay, so a serious, experienced agent, and he was fired. When?
Literally as he was about to transfer to a new post in Alabama. The timing was abrupt and, frankly, bizarre, according to many accounts. Fired just as he's packing his bags.
What was the official reason given, if any?
The rationale that emerged linked it back to COVID protocols from 2021 and 2022. Back then, Evans was working in FBI HR.
Right.
And his job was to implement the Justice Department safety rules, masking, testing, distancing, all that. Reports suggest that some agents who really hated those mandates lobbied against him, reaching out directly to people in Trump's orbit.
Including Kash Patel, the guy who later became FBI director in Trump's second term.
Including Kash Patel, according to those reports. So the implication is that this wasn't about current performance, but possibly payback for enforcing policies years earlier that some politically connected people disliked.
And this wasn't just Evans, right? Other senior people were affected.
Correct. It wasn't isolated. People like Brian Driscoll. He was known for protecting the identities of agents working sensitive January 6th cases from being doxxed. He was reportedly also part of this wave. Some were apparently told, retire now or you'll be fired. Evans's case had this weird twist where he was supposedly taken off a termination list, brought back, even got an award for his service, and then months later, bang, terminated anyway.
So he's being honored by Las Vegas for making the city safer and fired by the federal government in the same week.
That's the reported sequence of events. Incredibly jarring.
So what happens now? Are they just accepting this?
Oh, no. Lawsuits are coming.
Yeah.
Evans' attorney has been very clear about that.
On what grounds?
They're arguing the administration completely ignored federal laws that protect federal employees. Those laws guarantee things like written notice, a chance to respond to allegations, legal representation, an appeal process, due process, basically.
And they're saying none of that happened.
None of it, according to the attorney. And similar lawsuits are already popping up from people fired in other agencies too, like FEMA, the Justice Department.
So the core question is whether the president's executive power under Article 2 just overrides all those job protections Congress put in place for federal workers.
That's the fundamental constitutional clash these cases represent. Can the president just fire career civil servants at will, regardless of existing laws designed to prevent political purges?
And the impact of removing these experienced people?
Yeah.
What's the concern there? The public safety time bomb?
That's the fear, yes. When you take out agents, prosecutors, investigators with years, sometimes decades, of experience in tracking terrorists, hunting child predators, dismantling huge criminal rings, there are real-world consequences.
Oh, like specifically?
Well, for example, reports came out suggesting over 100 FBI agents in the D.C. field office were pulled off those kinds of complex cases.
100 agents pulled off serious crime investigations. To do what?
To, quote, walk a beat around the National Mall.
Walking a beat like street patrol around the mall, which is already crawling with police.
Exactly. An area already heavily secured, probably one of the safest spots in D.C. Critics argue it's a massive waste of highly specialized talent.
So the direct cost to you, the public, is?
Every hour an experienced agent spends doing routine patrol is an hour not spent investigating a potential terror plot, or tracking and network trafficking kids, or building a case against an organized crime family. It's a direct drain on the resources needed to stop serious harm.
And this fits into a bigger picture, you were saying. Evan's case is just one piece.
One piece of what looks like a much broader pattern. The Trump administration's reported push to consolidate power within the executive branch.
Beyond just firing people?
Yes. Think about removing independent watchdogs like inspectors general, sidelining judges on bodies like the Merit Systems Protection Board, which hears federal employee appeals, even publicly attacking federal judges, including Supreme Court justices, when they ruled against the administration.
It looks like an effort to remove checks and balances within the executive branch itself.
That's how many observers interpret it. Political scientists have a term for where this can lead: patrimonialism.
Patrimonialism? What's that?
It's where loyalty to the leader becomes more important than loyalty to the law or the institution. Decisions get made, people get promoted based on personal allegiance rather than merit or rules.
It's dangerous.
It's exactly as dangerous as it sounds for a constitutional republic. It fundamentally changes the nature of government, potentially eroding the rule of law itself.
It also takes guts to fight back against this, doesn't it? You mentioned Evans's lawyer, Mark Zaid.
Yeah, and it's a relevant point. Zaid himself was targeted. They revoked his security clearance after he represented the whistleblower in Trump's first impeachment.
Wow.
It shows that standing up, challenging these actions, often means putting a target on your own back. The system only works if people are willing to take those risks to defend it.
So it really boils down to this huge question. Is our federal law enforcement staffed by professionals who answer to the law, or by political loyalists who answer to one person?
That's the core question. And if it shifts towards the latter,
the damage isn't just theoretical in court cases or personnel files.
No, it shows up on our streets. It shows up in the crimes that don't get prevented, the cases that don't get solved because the expertise or the will isn't there anymore. The potential impact on public safety is immense and deeply worrying.
The internal dynamics, loyalty, controversy, and cracks in the machine.
Okay, let's dive into some of the personalities and internal dynamics shaping the political scene right now.
Yeah.
Starting with Laura Loomer. She's often described as a key, if chaotic, figure in what people call the MAGA cinematic universe.
Chaotic is definitely a word often associated with her, yes.
She's like this cocktail. One part conspiracy theorist, one part far-right activist, one part failed political candidate.
Shaken vigorously.
Right. Shaken vigorously with internet bans, a ton of lawsuits, and just a heavy splash of, well, unfiltered bigotry, according to many reports.
And her public record, especially for someone who's only 32, is extensive and certainly controversial.
Like what?
Well, running for Congress multiple times, losing each time, getting banned from pretty much every major social media platform you can think of, showing up uninvited to events seemingly just to cause a scene, suing well, suing almost everybody, and making public comments that are often described as so overtly racist and Islamophobic that even some other figures on the right have reportedly told her she needs to dial it back.
Okay, but here's the puzzle. Despite all that, she seems to have gotten incredibly close to Donald Trump. People call her his Trump whisperer. Trump himself called her a terrific person. How does that work?
It is perplexing to many observers. Her history of lawsuits actually gives you a window into her methods. She's sometimes called the lawsuit queen.
Okay, give us some examples.
Sure. She sued Bill Maher, the comedian, because he joked she might be in an arranged relationship with Trump. She claimed it hurt her career, maybe even cost her a White House job. That suit's still technically alive, but courts have trimmed it way down. Then there was the time she sued Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib back in 2018, claiming Tlaib grabbed her phone aggressively. That got dismissed.
Okay.
She sued CARA, the Council on American Islamic Relations, claiming they conspired with Twitter to get her banned. The judge literally used the word nonsensical to describe the case when dismissing it.
Nonsensical. Ouch.
And she ended up owing CARA $124,000 in legal fees. She's reportedly paying that off in monthly installments now.
Wow. Any others?
Oh, yeah. Huge lawsuits against Facebook, Twitter, Meta, even Procter & Gamble, the company that makes Tide Pods.
Procter & Gamble. Why?
It's often hard to follow the specific logic cited in the filings, but those suits were also dismissed, appeals denied. She's trying to get the Supreme Court to hear them now, but legal analysts say that's a long shot.
And didn't she physically chain herself to Twitter headquarters once?
She did, to protest being banned for hate speech. It was quite a scene, described by some onlookers as looking like a, quote, low-budget protest from a college improv group. These stunts and lawsuits are central to her public image.
And her actual rhetoric. You mentioned racism and Islamophobia. It's not subtle, is it? No dog whistles.
No, sources indicate it's extremely direct. Plain speaking, you could say. Just often deeply offensive.
Can you give some specific examples cited in reports?
Certainly. Reports mention her using degrading, racially loaded nicknames for Vice President Kamala Harris, Georgia DA Fani Willis, New York AG Letitia James, all prominent black women.
Okay.
Mocking Harris's Indian heritage, reportedly talking about the White House smelling like curry or speeches being run out of a call center.
Jeez.
In 2017, when migrants died crossing the Mediterranean, she reportedly wrote, "Good, here's to 2,000 more."
That's horrific.
At a white nationalist conference in 2022, she reportedly declared herself a white advocate. She's proudly called herself an Islamophobe and compared Islam to a cancer on humanity.
Unbelievable.
And after the horrific Christchurch mosque shooting in New Zealand, where 51 Muslim worshippers were murdered, her reported tweet was, "Nobody cares about Christchurch. I especially don't. These aren't slips of the tongue." Reports suggest this is her brand.
So back to the main question. Why on earth is Donald Trump apparently listening to this person? What's the connection?
Well, looking at Trump's political orbit, analysts often point out that controversy itself can be a pathway to influence.
How so?
Controversy generates media attention. Media attention drives fundraising and mobilizes a certain base. Loomer defends Trump ferociously and attacks his enemies with a kind of intensity that definitely gets noticed.
And Trump values loyalty above all else, seemingly.
Fierce loyalty, yes. That seems paramount. Loomer provides that in spades. It's also telling that even Republicans who might privately disapprove, like Lindsey Graham, who reportedly called her a bad influence, they generally don't tell Trump to cut ties publicly.
Why not?
Because criticizing the boss, even indirectly, is still seen as the third rail in MAGA world. You just don't do it if you want to stay in favor.
There's also this element people talk about, the grift factor.
Ah, yes. In the MAGA cinematic universe, as you called it, there's often a sense that everyone's selling something.
Yeah.
For someone like Loomer, controversy is the product, it's content. And content equals cash.
How?
Every ban, every lawsuit, every viral stunt can be spun into merchandise t-shirts, hats, book deals, paid speaking gigs, online donation drives. Being banned everywhere actually becomes a selling point to a certain audience.
They see it as proof she's over the target,
Yeah.
right? Speaking truth to power.
Exactly. It validates her in their eyes. So the outrage directly fuels the business model.
So why does this matter to you, the listener? Why should people care about Laura Loomer?
Because she's not just some fringe internet personality anymore. The reporting indicates she's been welcomed into the Trump inner circle. She's apparently influencing conversations happening at the very top of the Republican Party.
So her proximity to power is significant.
It says a lot about where that movement is willing to go, what kind of rhetoric and alliances are considered acceptable. She's a symptom, perhaps, of a political climate where outrage is currency, bigotry can be a brand, and getting close to power might just be a really provocative tweet away. Understanding her role helps understand the larger currents.
Okay, let's talk about another prominent figure, Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's been a bit of maybe a political plot twist. She's one of Trump's loudest cheerleaders, right? A self-proclaimed Magier warrior.
Absolutely. Represents a very conservative district in Georgia, deeply loyal to Trump.
But now she's making noise about possibly leaving the Republican Party, saying she's not sure she relates to it anymore.
It is an interesting development, yes. Her whole political brand has been built on populism, conspiracy theories, remember the Jewish space lasers, and this almost religious devotion to Donald Trump. Rants about the deep state, stolen elections, that's her signature style.
So what are these signs of a potential break, or at least some friction, with the Maggie faithful line?
Well, a few things have raised eyebrows. First, she criticized that big, beautiful bill associated with Trump. She said on X, formerly Twitter, that if she had actually read the whole thing, she would have voted no.
But she did vote yes.
She did still vote yes, which shows her trying to walk this kind of weird tightrope, supporting Trump in her actions, but voicing criticism in her words, trying to have it both ways, maybe.
What else?
She also criticized Trump's foreign policy regarding Iran, specifically on Tucker Carlson's show. That stood out because it's pretty unusual for her to publicly disagree with Trump on policy, even slightly.
And Jeffrey Epstein files thing. She's big on that conspiracy.
Yeah, right. Very big. She's pushed the idea that the government is hiding bombshells about Epstein's network. So when the Trump Justice Department officially said, nope, no more documents coming, she was clearly frustrated.
Did she blame Trump?
See, that's the key. She accused the people in charge or the administration of breaking promises. But notice she reportedly still wouldn't say Trump's name directly in that criticism.
So it's classic MTG then. Stir up the base with conspiracy talk, but pull back from directly attacking the leader.
That's exactly how analysts are reading it. She's willing to generate outrage and point fingers vaguely, but she seems very careful not to cross that line into criticizing Trump himself and risking exile from Magier world.
She's also saying the Republican Party has turned its back on America first and ordinary folks, even talking about leaving the party. But isn't the Republican Party basically Donald Trump right now?
That's the inherent contradiction, isn't it? If the party is Trump and she's unhappy with the party, logically, she should be unhappy with him, and yet she clearly isn't expressing that.
So what does that mean? Is she just aiming her fire at GOP leaders besides Trump? Or is it all just performance?
It could be either or both. Maybe she's genuinely frustrated with figures like McConnell or McCarthy, the establishment wing. Or it could be a strategic performance, positioning herself as an independent anti-establishment voice while remaining firmly loyal to Trump. It reinforces her brand with her base.
She also brought up gender dynamics, didn't she? Saying Republican women get it more than the good old boys. Mentioned Elise Stefanik being treated unfairly.
She did. And while, yes, politics definitely has its share of old guard attitudes and sexism coming from Greene, it often feels less like a broad feminist critique.
And more like?
More like another weapon in her ongoing battle against the parts of the GOP establishment she doesn't like. It frames her conflicts in a way that might resonate with some female voters, but it aligns with her overall anti-establishment posture.
So the key takeaway here, don't be fooled. This probably isn't a rebrand. She's not suddenly becoming more independent or moderate.
Absolutely not. Look at her actions. She's still introducing bills based on weather manipulation conspiracy theories, still denying climate change, still using harsh rhetoric against immigrants, even legal ones, still defending Putin, still trying to defund PBS because apparently Sesame Street is a threat to national security.
Right, so it's the same Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Exactly, just maybe aiming her fire slightly differently at times. The core ideology seems unchanged.
Okay, so why does this internal GOP dynamic matter to you, the listener?
Because it signals potential cracks within the Maggie movement itself. It hints at the slow-burning tension.
Tension between who?
Between the real purists, maybe like Greene, who perhaps think Trump hasn't gone far enough or is compromising too much, and the rest of the GOP establishment who might be trying to, rein things in before the whole thing implodes.
Could this lead to a real split?
These internal fights can get really nasty. If Greene actually did leave the GOP, could it trigger a chain reaction? Other far-right figures trying to break off and form their own thing? It's possible.
Probably not happening tomorrow, though.
Probably not tomorrow. But the fact that she's even talking about it publicly suggests the tensions are very real. It could definitely make for some political fireworks down the road. Keep an eye on it.
The distraction playbook? civil rights under threat.
All right, let's shift focus again. We're going to look at what some analysts call a distraction playbook, especially concerning civil rights. And it starts with a name you probably recognize, Kim Davis.
Ah, yes, the former county clerk from Kentucky.
Right. Became famous, or infamous, back in 2015 for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples after the Supreme Court's big Obergefell ruling established marriage equality.
She became a real cause célèbre for the religious right.
Well, she's apparently back.
Mm.
And she's filing a petition asking the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell entirely.
That's what's reported, yes. Asking the court to completely undo marriage equality.
Now, commentators often point out something about her being the messenger for the sanctity of marriage movement.
Right. The fact that she herself has been married 4 times.
4 times.
Look, personal histories are complex, no judgment there. But when you position yourself as the poster child for marriage purity, as some critics phrase it, having a relationship resume that reads like the extended edition of a soap opera, as one commentator put it, well, it does create a certain irony.
It makes her seem like a maybe strange messenger for that particular cause.
Some would definitely argue that, yes. It raises questions about the choice of plaintiff, perhaps.
Okay, so legally, what's she actually doing? She filed a cert petition.
Exactly. A petition for a writ of certiorari. That's the formal way you ask the Supreme Court, hey, will you please hear my case?
And one of the specific questions she's asking the court to answer is whether Obergefell itself should be overturned.
That's reportedly one of the core questions presented in her petition. And just filing that has, predictably, caused huge stir online.
Yeah.
People are understandably worried.
But is the Supreme Court actually likely to take her case? What do the experts say?
The overwhelming consensus among Supreme Court watchers is no. Highly unlikely.
Why not?
Because the court is usually very strategic when it decides to overturn a major precedent, like they did with Roe v. Wade. They wait for what they see as the perfect test case.
Meaning a case with?
Clean facts, sympathetic plaintiffs, maybe, and most importantly, a really strong, well-argued legal reason that fits the narrative they want to build for overturning the previous decision.
And Kim Davis's case is?
It's generally seen as, well, weak sauce, legally speaking. Her argument is basically, I shouldn't have had to pay fines for refusing to do my job because of my religion, therefore you should overturn this massive civil rights ruling.
That doesn't sound like a very direct path.
It is not. It's not the kind of strong, focused legal challenge the court typically looks for when considering such a monumental step. It seems tangential.
So the main takeaway here is that this Kim Davis story, while getting headlines, is probably best understood as a distraction.
That's the analysis from many legal commentators, yes, a distraction. But, and this is crucial, it's not because Republicans or opponents of marriage equality have given up on overturning Obergefell.
Oh, they definitely haven't given up.
Absolutely not. They are coming for it.
Yeah.
Just probably not through Kim Davis's particular lawsuit. This isn't the main event.
So where is the main event? Where is the real legal threat to LGBTQ plus equality right now, according to these analyses?
The real threat, legal experts warn, is happening elsewhere. The Supreme Court has already agreed to hear 2 other cases this term. Cases that could seriously lay the groundwork for rolling back LGBTQ plus protections.
Which cases are those?
They're called Hecox v. Little, which comes out of Idaho, and BPJ v. West Virginia State Board of Education. These are the cases that civil rights groups are watching like hawks.
And on the surface, what are those cases about?
On the surface, they're about trans athletes, whether states can ban transgender girls and women from participating in school sports consistent with their gender identity.
Okay, that seems specific, but there's a deeper issue.
There's always a deeper issue at the Supreme Court. The fundamental legal question lurking beneath the surface in these cases is about equal protection.
How so?
It's about whether LGBTQ plus people, specifically trans people, in these cases qualify as what lawyers call a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
What does suspect class mean legally?
It's a category, like race or national origin, where if a law discriminates against that group, the law gets the highest level of judicial scrutiny, strict scrutiny. It means the government have to have a really, really compelling reason for the discrimination, and the law has to be perfectly tailored. It's almost impossible for a discriminatory law to survive strict scrutiny.
Okay, so if the court says trans people aren't a suspect class,
then the legal standard for justifying discrimination against them becomes much lower. And legal experts worry that the court could use that reasoning, that trans identity isn't a specially protected class, to start chipping away at protections for the entire LGBTQ plus community down the line.
So it sets a precedent.
It's a precedent that makes it easier to justify discrimination. And that precedent could then be used in a future, better prepared case to go directly after Obergefell. It weakens the foundation.
This sounds exactly like the strategy used against abortion rights. The long game.
Precisely. It mirrors the playbook perfectly. They didn't jump straight from Roe to a total ban. They spent decades building a wall of smaller rulings, state restrictions, chipping away, narrowing the right, changing the legal standards.
Until the moment was right for the big swing.
Exactly. That's the fear here. These trans athlete cases could be the initial chips off the block, setting the stage for a bigger challenge later.
And the danger of the Kim Davis distraction is that it pulls focus away from these arguably much more significant cases.
That's the concern. Every time Kim Davis pops up, the media covers it, people debate it. And meanwhile, these other cases, the ones laying the real groundwork, proceed quietly, often without much public awareness.
The urgent issues get buried.
Urgent issues get buried. The slow, methodical work of eroding rights happens in the shadows while everyone's looking at the sideshow.
And what are some of those urgent issues affecting the LGBTQ plus community that get overlooked?
Oh, there are so many real-world challenges, just the basics. Rising costs of living, finding affordable housing, then specific things like gaps in healthcare access, especially mental health, direct attacks on trans healthcare access, and the ability to update identity documents.
Things that affect daily life.
Absolutely. Plus, chronic underfunding for HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment, federal inaction on making sure fertility treatments are accessible for all kinds of families, and just the constant drumbeat of state and federal efforts trying to roll back civil liberties across the board. These things often fall off the radar.
So, given this landscape, the potential distractions, the long game you like, what can you, the listener, actually do? What are the actionable steps?
Okay, practical steps. First, get your own legal house in order. Seriously.
Or meaning?
Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, a will. Make sure they're up to date and reflect your wishes. This is crucial, as the advice goes, especially if you're in a vulnerable state, or if your family structure might face legal hurdles. Protect yourself and your loved ones legally.
Okay, what else?
Support the organizations doing the heavy lifting legally. Groups like Gila Ally, Lambda Legal, the National Center for Lesbian Rights. They are in the trenches, fighting these battles in court every single day. They rely on donations.
Right, they need resources.
They absolutely do. Third, focus on state-level protections. Push for constitutional amendments in your state, strong non-discrimination laws, laws specifically protecting trans health care.
Because state laws can provide a firewall if federal protections weaken.
Exactly. The stronger your state's laws, the safer your rights are if the federal landscape shifts. Remember, even if Obergefell somehow got overturned, 16 states already have their own marriage equality laws on the books. It would be messy, a patchwork, but state laws matter.
Okay. And finally,
and this is maybe the most important, stay engaged on all civil rights issues, not just the ones that seem to affect you directly.
Because it's all connected.
History shows us time and time again, when the rights of the group perceived as weakest or least defended get targeted, the rest of us usually aren't far behind. It's a domino effect. Defending everyone's rights protects your own in the long run.
Outro. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, think about all the threads we've pulled together. From attempts to redefine who counts as an American citizen, concerns about the very integrity of the economic numbers we rely on,
to the reports of politicizing federal law enforcement and the strategic, almost stealthy ways civil rights seem to be getting chipped away at.
Right. These things might look separate on the surface, but they're deeply interconnected. They all point to this moment we're in, where really fundamental American principles are being tested, maybe even radically reshaped. It really underscores how vital critical thinking is, especially when we're just overloaded with information all the time. Absolutely. This whole discussion has really been about the rules of the game, hasn't it? The meaning of citizenship itself, and whether we as a country are actually going to stick to the principles we say we stand for. It just hammers home how important it is to stay informed and, stay engaged.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on. What does it actually mean for a society when the very idea of objective truth, the trustworthiness of its basic institutions, the fundamental rights of its people, when all of that is constantly up for grabs, constantly subject to political maneuvering?
That's a heavy question.
It is. And it leads to the next one. How do you personally contribute to holding on to the bedrock principles you believe in? especially when it feels like the ground is shifting under our feet. As one analysis put it, really understanding the game they might be playing. Well, that makes us, the informed public, a lot harder to beat. Something to think about.